Okay, so thank you everyone for joining our session. This is Lili from Geosk IPO, and this kind of a session is aligned with a kind of a global open science cloud initiative that has been co-supported by CoData and the CNIC CAS. And the theme today we are going to talk about is how to get kind of open science actions towards this sustainable development goals. And we would like to initialize an infrastructure dialogue with the global south. But I think the difficult part is we lost several speakers today. Like for me, I have a clash with another two different sessions at the same time. So our co-chairs has been separated in different rooms. And for ours, I'm the Lili and Tshiamo is with us, and we have several other talks. And Renia is not here, but she provided some of the talks on how to develop capacity building to promote open collaboration. And thank you all to be joining together with us. At least we will still continue to have this open collaboration towards the SDGs. And to keep things short, I think we have 4 different talks today focusing on this issue about the open science actions. And among all of them, the first is we should listen to the kind of regional and local dialogue on how's everything going from the global south. And the first talk comes from Tshiamo. And Dr. Tshiamo is the director of African Open Science Platform. And today he's sharing something on how that program is trying to develop these cyber infrastructures by exploring the opportunities through federated policy-aware research environment in the platform. So Tshiamo, the floor is yours. Thank you.
I'm very happy that you raised some speakers because it means I inherit all their time, isn't it? Coming across, halfway across the world, 23 hours flights, and I think I can use the time to share a lot of thoughts. Colleagues, my name is Tshiamo. Can you hear me? My name is Tshiamo. I'm the inaugural director for the African Open Science Platform, a very, very exciting opportunity to advance continentally this area of open science. I try to highlight elements that you are involved in, and I've put in green those that I think are relevant to the talk today. And I'm excited because AOSP is also engaging stakeholders across the board in partnership to advance all those areas. I hasten to say we don't provide infrastructure ourselves. In fact, we are not a physical platform. We're an open science diplomacy platform. So I'm an open science diplomat, so to say. Can I also say that IDW is coming to South Africa in 2027. And I think, Lili, we need to use these opportunities to start building conversations that we can revisit in 2027. I had the opportunity to be in the organizing committee for IDW 2028. And I think one of the things that we need to really think about is also to make sure that these conversations are participated on by a whole diversity of stakeholders, including early career researchers. I think we can do a lot more there. Colleagues, I also think we need to look at these conversations holistically. As the African Open Science Platform, we are interested in all those facets. You know, open science, artificial intelligence, research infrastructures, and certainly the platforms that allow us through cyber infrastructure to facilitate all this. I think that slide also summarizes a little bit of what we're about, and I've highlighted in green the elements that I think also pertains to what we are discussing today, particularly the work on open science infrastructure support, and the work on policy influence. We try to drive alignments. There's a lot of fragmentation, and I believe it's quite opportune to look at who is doing what and look for synergies in what we do so that we can obviously work together to advance all these areas. We certainly want to design and deliver activities together, which is why we are very keen on South-to-South collaborations. Colleagues, Africa is big, so I'm always very reluctant to stand here and say I'm coordinating something for the whole of Africa. Look at the scale on the right-hand side. Represents both the diversity and the challenges, but also opportunities. Africa is divided into regions. We call them regional economic bodies. This is a cluster of countries. They also engage to politically integrate, economically integrate, but also through science technology to also integrate. So I think this is a key point right there. So what we do as ARSP is to try to engage in all those racks so that we have the diversity and representation. This slide also shows you some of the areas that, as a continent, we aspire to integrate. And there is a measure that highlights how well we are doing. I wanted to highlight that because you'll see that there is good efforts across the continent to integrate across multiple dimensions. Therefore, this gives us an opportunity as ARSP to have representation in the various regions of Africa. So far, we have 3 regional nodes. We have a node in North Africa, based in Egypt at the National Authority for Remote Sensing, particularly because open science, space sciences represent a very good opportunity to advance open science, Earth observation, you can imagine. We think they can provide us with an avenue that's special also because the African Space Agency is also hosted there. We have an office in Kenya, looking at our interests in East Africa, based at the African Institute of Capacity Development. Again, the Eastern African bloc is a very large area. And then in Southern Africa, we are hosted at the Ubuntu Net Alliance. I'll talk a little bit about them because they are a network of NRENs, and they provide very good avenues for federation. The AOSP coordinating office that I lead is based at the NRF. NRF is the National Research Foundation. It's a huge organization. You'll see on the right-hand side, on the left-hand side, on the right-hand side that it runs and hosts national research facilities, biodiversity, environmental observation network, astronomy, accelerators. These are huge research infrastructures, research facilities. So ASP is hosted, the coordinating hub that is hosted there by South Africa for Africa in terms of the coordinating office. I did mention the other offices that we have. We think an institution like NRF gives us opportunities to leverage internal capacities, but also to advance continental internationalization on some of these areas. NRF also hosts some very significant programs like Future Earth and others, but is also a member of the Science Granting Council Initiative. So it's a very opportune avenue for advancing open science through them. Colleagues, I want to emphasize this. Everything that we talk about has to be anchored also in policy. Africa has got some very good policies at a continental level. These policies are done at an AU level, African Union level, and then the different regions can also develop their own regional policies. And then individual countries can then develop policies, obviously talking to those ones. I wanted to highlight this because these are quite relevant to what we are discussing today to provide us with an anchor around these things. And then, of course, if you look at the AI strategy, the issue of infrastructure is central, isn't it? The issue of infrastructure, the issues of data, the issues of capacity development are quite critical. I wanted to highlight that because it pertains to the issues that we are talking about today. So as ASP, we are very keen. We are very keen to work with policymakers because I think the dialogue has also got to be at a policy level. I think sometimes we put the cart before the horse and we enthuse about technology and we leave other actors, other stakeholders behind. And I think you'll agree that by and large, we really need to think both bottom up and top down. And certainly policy enables everything that we do. So as ASP, we've been engaging for some time as a key area of ours to engage policymakers to help obviously engage in policy formulation or to motivate the need for certain things. You'll see there the very nice diagram that shows what is called the cyber infrastructure. It's a fancy term that talks about that ecosystem. And I think every country ought to be really thinking about creating these ecosystems, not least to promote collaborations that we need, and certainly in developing countries to maximize the little resources that you have. It's not everybody, for example, in every country that can afford a huge supercomputing facilities. But if you have supercomputing facilities and you've got X number of universities, there's a very good opportunity through creating these infrastructures that you can maximize those investments. And I think for the developing world, this is really critical. So we have worked with policymakers in different regions, in this particular case in Southern Africa, to motivate the need for creating such ecosystems. And I wanted to highlight that because it's really fundamental to the work that is happening. Also for open science, we've provided policy engagement and policy advice through the regional bodies regarding the issue of open science. To this end, you'll see these decisions that has been espoused by ministers vis-a-vis what the region envisages to do with open science. And this is very critical, given that Africa also has got the TISA, that's the Science and Technology Innovation Policy. Therein, it also talks about the need to accelerate transition to open science. So ASP engages, especially, for example, if you look at the need for developing regional guidelines for this. I'm putting these two because these are critical, Lili. The open science, the infrastructure, and then what you do with the infrastructure through open science to then obviously do what we are talking about with SDGs. So colleagues, what I came here today was to say all this work culminated in us developing an implementation plan for the Southern African Development Community to talk about how they can do this that you see there over the long term. And I think it's an important step because this implementation plan then obviously provides avenues for collaborators and for institutions to take their part in the implementation of these areas. If you're wondering how we approach doing this, we really needed to convince and articulate what the purpose of these cyber infrastructures are. I think for you to be able to build a case in terms of the value proposition of something with policymakers is very critical to be able to articulate such. So we did provide this. You see that the slides there are really from the ministerial meeting that we had. So I think it's very, very critical to have that. And also emphasize the importance of these infrastructures, cyber infrastructures, vis-a-vis the usual challenges, the cost, the efficiency, security, and emphasizing the need for regional integration. I wanted also to highlight that the work that I'm showing there, I started some years ago as a proof of concept. So we also wanted to articulate to the ministers for approval of this particular plan that some work has already been done, particularly through the SADC HPC ecosystems project. Normally you have your national centers, but you know that at institutions, at universities, very few universities, for example, have got these supercomputing facilities, or at least some clusters. So some work was done to try to capacitate universities in the region with some computing facilities. So it was quite critical to highlight that work, particularly to highlight how that infrastructure could be used for supporting obviously different communities of practice. Originally, the computational facilities that were developed were for preparedness in terms of both skills and otherwise for the square kilometer array project in astronomy. In the long term, obviously, these skill sets in the ecosystem will be very, very critical in the success of projects. I just wanted to highlight that as a use case. Obviously, there is a huge facility regarding the project, but at universities, it's quite critical also to have the pipeline of skills. So we posted this to the ministers vis-a-vis what this infrastructure should do. Colleague, coming to what Lili asked me to talk about, what are the opportunities in Africa, for example, to create these connected clouds? We really need to think about the capacities we have, both at a national level and also at institutional level. Colleagues, I want to highlight that there are some investments in supercomputing facilities in the continent, some in the north. I'll give an example of Morocco, a 3 petaflop system. I've been there myself to see it. And then we have colleagues from South Africa, and more, I think more is there. Yeah, more comes from the National Integrated Cyber Infrastructure Ecosystem South Africa. One of their legs is the supercomputing facility in Cape Town. It's a petaflop system. I believe that is also being upgraded. But these are huge investments. How nice it would be in the long term to create an ecosystem around them to provide accessibility to those that don't have national facilities. There's some scoping of some work regarding investments at university level or regarding deployments that were done at the university level. So you can see some of the reports pertaining to scoping what is available in Africa, including what we did with the SADC ecosystem project. And I think this is a very good exercise to think about this hardware investments and what they're being used for, and to be able to articulate in reports vis-a-vis what are the capacities that are available. Lili also then asked me about federation. You have all these investments, the supercomputing facilities, you've got the connectivity. What can you then do on top of this? You'll agree that federation provides a number of opportunities. I've highlighted some of them there, and I think it's a no-brainer that they're all important. The question is, how do you go about it? So as ASP, we do have the Ubuntu Net Alliance, which is a network of NRENs. As you know, the NRENs connect universities. They provide services, but they also now increasingly provide advanced services, including data services. So we strategically selected the Ubuntu Net Alliance, which is a network of NRENs in Southern Africa and East Africa, to be the node that supports us regarding going forward with infrastructure support. You can see the connectivity is very good. Federation requires good connectivity. Africa does a very good backbone through the undersea cables. And then, of course, internally through NRENs, research institutions, universities are also connected. And in terms of the Ubuntu Net Alliance node that we have, they do, as an NREN, provide some of these services that are relevant to federation. And I wanted to highlight that some of those are already there. You know, EduGain and EduRoam. There is also very good investments regarding, for example, cloud infrastructure, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, additional services like domain DOIs and SSLs and the like. So in terms of connectivity and what you need for federation, these things are there. What we also wanted to do in the implementation plan was to highlight to the ministers the importance of these cyber infrastructures. You see that in the implementation plan, there are a number of areas that are unpacked in the implementation plan. But we wanted to highlight that these things are not just there for just research, but they can also have multi-sectoral impact, which comes to the SDGs, Lili, that you asked about, which is what I wanted to highlight, that we wanted to showcase that once you have these cyber infrastructures, there's some very good relevant work, including driving SDGs through open science and through areas like space sciences. Remember, you are talking to policymakers. They are the ones who fund these things. So it's very critical to make this information available. As ASP, we do some very good relevant work regarding, for example, some studies to highlight opportunities through open science in space sciences. For example, aligning or highlighting how we can obviously affect SDGs through space sciences, through geoinformatics, and the like. Just pinning it down to try to highlight good examples. I was in Botswana the other time, I think a month ago. Botswana has launched a CUBE satellite. These are small countries. There's a CUBE satellite up there. They've got the NREN. They've got some data centers. They've got universities. How nice would it be to be able to create ecosystems around these investments so that we can do interesting work? We also tell the ministers that areas like disaster risk reduction are very critical for SDGs, as you know, but there's also challenges regarding, for example, access to data regarding disaster risk reduction, and certainly ecosystems around these data sets and around these infrastructures. And these cyber infrastructures we talked about can also be very useful for that. ASP was a knowledge partner in the G20 presidency of South Africa regarding the Research and Innovation Working Group. There are various working groups for the G20. And the Research and Innovation Working Group had a number of deliverables. One deliverable in the Open Innovation for Sustainable Development theme was to develop or have a project around which the G20 can engage. We provided some thought leadership in coining that particular project. And these projects have to talk about SDGs, they have to talk about development, they have to talk about affecting lives. So we chose a deliverable around looking at informal settlements, the flood risks around that. I think anybody from a developing country will relate with a problem like this. People come into cities because of migration, looking for opportunities, and settling the fringes of society, so to say. And of course, it would be nice to provide solutions, including detecting the growth of these informal settlements, thinking about forecasting their expansion and classifying risks associated with such. And the approach here was really to have an open innovation approach in terms of available data sets, skills, in terms of innovators, entrepreneurs, people who can work on these problems in hackathons. So I think it's very critical when we do this type of projects to showcase how the cyber infrastructure underneath can also support these things. And of course, before we did the project, it was very important to look at what is available in terms of the data sets. We did a survey, and I think the results of this survey will also be very instrumental in highlighting the gaps. So colleagues, I want to highlight this because we have to provide a very strong case for these infrastructures that we provide. The other interesting work that came out of the G20 for Africa was looking at this issue of AI and how, for example, the South African leadership for this one-year presidency can look at how AI could be advanced, including in the continent. So I wanted to highlight the work that was done by the task force for AI regarding the issue of AI and data governance. And I think it's quite critical also to connect this to the AU AI strategy vis-a-vis the aspirations of Africa in this space. Another very critical work, and I'm glad that there's a lot of good sessions here. Give me 2 minutes, Lili. Genomics, human heredity. Africa is the most diverse continent in the world, linguistically, genetically, and the potential for genomics, including for therapies, is quite critical. And of course, you know that genomics, just like astronomy, these are areas that generate a lot of data and the need for infrastructures to do that. I wouldn't dwell into it, but there's some good work been done regarding developing an African Bioinformatics Institute in around these areas. And I think these are good use cases for research infrastructures, and I wanted to highlight those. This is my final slide, Lili. So really, there it is. The cyber infrastructures that we are developing have to be grounded in policy and have to be seen as enablers for what we do, and certainly have to have an ecosystem and a community around them so that now in the long term their value and their worth could be maximized. And I wanted to come halfway across the world today to stimulate this conversation so that in 2027, when all of you come to South Africa, we can revisit this and find out who is doing what and who's done what in the north-south, in the south-to-south collaborations. Thank you very much for indulging me, for giving me more than 5 minutes, Lili. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tshiamo. And before we move to the next one, do we have a quick question from our audience?
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Tomasho. It's a very insightful presentation. I have a question around the point that you touched on regarding communication with the policymakers. So if you can elaborate more about your strategies in convincing them to invest in this. So yeah, what strategies did you take to approach them, to work together with them to invest in this project?
No, so the implementation plan is really there to highlight what the policymakers in their own countries can start thinking about investing in those ecosystems. We're trying to build a case, isn't it? So we have an opportunity through this, the secretariats in these regional economic bodies to go present at these ministers. Remember, we are providing thought leadership, and we are providing them with opportunities strategically to assess how they as countries or as regions can invest in these things. By and large, I don't know about you, by and large you find that policymakers are always a little risk averse. Sometimes you look at the recommendations of open science, they are the ones who endorse them, by the way. They're endorsed by 194 countries. But then when it comes down to actually doing things with them, it's always a challenge. I'm a computer scientist by training, but I had to go buy a suit and go be seconded in government for 2 years. And that time that I spent there gave me very good insights on how to work with policymakers. Sometimes they're afraid, especially the civil servants, for things that they don't know about. So sometimes you find that you need to do what we call science communication. Be able to articulate things in the language that they can understand, including strategically how maybe after 5 years they can get elected if they do ABCD. But on a serious note, I think sometimes we need science advisors working with policymakers to articulate things in non-technical terms and strategic terms. I cannot say that we've unlocked yet them investing. I showed you 2 facilities, one in Morocco and one in South Africa. We're talking about huge investments. Not many countries have invested there. So we're hoping that by these engagements with them at regional economic bodies, we can motivate, we can strategically advise, so to say, thought leadership, why these investments are necessary for the digital transformation of their research and science, technology, innovation ecosystems. We're hoping that in the long term the message will get through. But these are long-term conversations. But so far I would argue that by doing something bottom-up, you can actually demonstrate. I mean, I remember when I started this 10 years ago, my university did not have a facility. We got donations from the Texas Advanced Computing Center through this SADC Ecosystems project. And we trained a lot of systems admins. And we managed to help graduate a number of PhDs that were struggling because they did not have access to proper computational modeling facilities. And by having these use cases, these demonstrations of impact, and documenting it and articulating it, you can obviously influence policymakers regarding, even institutionally, regarding them investing in some of these things. So really that's the approach that I would argue. You need to demonstrate utilization. You don't always have to ask for big monies. You can ask for resources to get started and use that to provide evidence that these particular investments have gone a long way to doing something. I think that hopefully answers the question.
Here, we can start by a case study. As we know, AlphaFold is a Nobel Prize-winning work, very influential. Its training data comes from multiple data centers. For example, it relies diverse datasets, including protein sequences from BFD and UniProt, and protein structures from PDB, and metagenomics data from Magnifi. This data all sourced from different locations. This highlights the critical needs for effective data collaboration in cutting-edge research. There is another compelling case in the ecological data processing, such as studies of the Yellow River Basin, which is a critical ecological barrier for China. Researchers may require integrating diverse data types like remote sensing, imagery, meteorological data, and digital elevation algorithms to perform complex analysis to identify the location of silt dam in Jianhui County and evaluating its ecological value. However, this process illustrates a common dilemma. Let's imagine a scenario like this. There may be a scientist wanting to forecast the silt dam's risk faces adopting first step to finding and collecting the necessary data. They must ask, where do I find the data? And then navigate a complex landscape of data providers and then collect this data as a whole from those providers. Okay, I call such a approach as the collect as a whole, also called core. This core approach is inefficient and create a significant overhead, apparently. Here's some pinpoints of the core approach. The popular core approach is fraught with challenge. First, the lack of a unified data map makes it difficult to locate the right data. Second, it's highly inefficient, as researchers often have to download large datasets in their entirety, even though only a small portion is relevant to their work. For instance, a user might need only 1 month of data from a huge dataset spanning over a century. Current systems often doesn't support such targeted retrieval. Finally, this manual process of data circulation lacks oversight, posing risk of data misuse and tampering. This clearly shows the need for a new way to handle research data collaboration. To address the above challenges, we proposed the ARDC in architecture to enable end-to-end collaborative analysis of research data. It is composed of 4 layers from the bottom up. The stable software layer provides and also processes datasets as requested. The linked data network layer constructs a global data map to solve the data targeting problem. The workflow agent layer can run a sequence of heterogeneous tasks completely online without manual intervention. The data agent layer as a final interface to support domain researchers performing data-driven modeling in a conversational style. There is some key technologies under the architecture. The first one is metadata linking. By leveraging semantic web technology and controlled vocabularies, we can create a linked data network that connects metadata from disparate data centers. This network acts as a global data map, significantly enhancing the discoverability of scientific data. The second key technology is local-first workflow scheduling. Our guiding principle is to move the computation to the data, not the other way around. This avoids the massive overhead of transferring large data sets. Indeed, we transmit only the computational results. This allows for fine-grained, on-demand calculations. To ensure security, we use blockchain for traceability and auditing. Our third key technology is end-to-end workflow orchestrating. We bridge the gap between a research question and the final results by automatically orchestrating multiple step workflows using large language models. This allows researchers to interactively refine their data sources through a conversational interface, making complex analysis more accessible. Okay, let's move on to the practical part. Allow me to provide some context for the Connect. Since 2019, CES has established a scientific data center system comprising over 30 centers, spanning 3 hierarchical tiers. At the summit, we have General Center operated by my institute, CNIC. The intermediate layer is comprised discipline-specific centers like the Earth Observation Center, while the bottom layer houses institutional centers such as the zoology data center. To achieve this goal, we developed a network named Connect over the CES data centers. Connect follows the ARDC architecture, which can be divided into 4 layers, as we introduced previous. The General Center is the most important part of the Connect. It needs to support end-to-end collaborative analysis of research data because this research may using different data sets and algorithms across distributed centers. And it must to provide some interface for researchers to solve the final problem online, which means all steps can be performed online. And today, Connect has adopted 7 institutional data centers. It provides a global data map covering 20 terabytes of resources and supports cross-center scheduling of computing tasks. A practical use case is dam detection around the Yellow River. RDCN can orchestrate a workflow involving over 10 datasets and nearly 20 analysis models across 3 different centers to answer a complex question like how many dams exist in this area. Another use case is the analysis of above-ground grass biomass. This workflow spans multiple data centers, involves over 100 analysis algorithms, and integrates 4 distinct data processing flows. Looking ahead, we plan to adopt Connect for a wider range of application scenarios, from biodiversity and multi-messenger astronomy to field station monitoring. Our vision is not limited to our own network. We are actively working to make RDCN compatible with similar international initiatives, such as Europe's EU data and the ISON telescope network and the NFDI, and also maybe we have cooperation chances with the USP. To summarize, ARDC is a reference architecture for research data collaboration built on 3 pillars: metadata linking, local first workflow scheduling, and end-to-end workflow orchestration. Our implementation, Connect, has been successfully deployed across the CES data centers. Our long-term vision is to provide a fully automated question and answer style data processing service that lowers the technology barrier for data analysis for all researchers. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Hodson. And before we move to the next one, do we have a quick question for you? Okay, thank you, Hodson. So actually, Hodson has introducing something of the technical solutions we have been carrying out from the Computer Network Information Chinese Academy for Sciences, and for the center, the Big Data Center, they are one of the holders for the national research data of fundamental science, and they developed a series of toolkits to manage the data through the life cycle. So as Tshiamo has began the talk, trying to establish a kind of a framework highlighting that for regional federation of the e-infrastructure, there are several things to do. Besides the kind of the policy scale in initiative, the technical part, the kind of regional and the global collaboration probably will be also one of the very important part. And today for the next dialogue, it comes from the RINIA. A professor is from the National Authority for Remote Sensing and Space Sciences from Egypt, and she can't make the trip today and assigned the task for me to introduce some of the things that they have been doing. I think RINIA is also be in charge of the AOSP North node. Yeah, yes. And for the regional work, and the topic today is trying to highlight something of the work they do for capacity building. So for the to promote a kind of sustained global South collaboration with the rest of the world, the capacity building is one thing that is particularly important. And among this, the Professor Rinia has summarized that into different layers. You can have a look. Actually, this one alliance with a research paper they have been publishing last year and another one this year. So you can just have a quick look of the further details in the Data Science Journal publication there. And through this kind of a capacity development framework, we see from the bottom, we have the technical empowerment of different dimensions, like for the digital literacy, which promotes the access to ICT for citizens, and the ICT infrastructures as AOSP and JIOSC. I'm going to introduce some of these things, and also the techniques, as Huajin has been mentioning some of these toolkits. And the next one go to the economic foundations, and it provides the different things that will be the strong consolidations that support the local citizens' digital literacy. And more based on that is from the institutional capacity building. I think this one is more aligned with open science and our research domains. The governance issue, the infrastructures, e-infrastructures, the research and development. And based on that, more beyond, it is the human capital development in different domains, and for different regions of their research, capacity building probably will shift, but the main ideas are quite similar. We probably need a lot of things like the skills to see the technologies, the infrastructures, and the domain applications, something like that. So based on this kind of capacity building, we need to define and design and develop kind of efficient day policies that can really make the things, the capacity building happen. So Renia has been listing some of the information, the threshold we probably could continue. And these are this information you see, like to emphasize the transparency of data, to promote the technical, political, and the interoperable standards, design and development, and the safe, secure concerns, the fostering the collaboration framework, and something for the technical thing like the artificial intelligence and the global data governance framework, creation of the platform, the funding that could support this, and something as the long-term sustained monitoring and evaluation of the full process. And so for the capacity building, we see that there are a lot of things we need to do from different levels of work, and the policy things align with these capacities to the thing something more, both from the digital access level and also from the manage and the governance level. And more information, as I mentioned, is listed in the paper. So any of you are interested in how Rini and the team has been trying to analyze the global partnership, I think you can turn to her paper. And so beyond that, I will turn to the next one and the last talk from the Global Open Science Cloud. And me from this kind of a cloud initiative. As I mentioned today, it is kind of co-supported by CNIC and CoData. And the talk is more on how we have been doing several things through the past 5 years to develop the shared infrastructures for sustainable development goals with the global partnership, especially the developing countries. And still a quick introduction to what we do under the JIOSC initiative. So for JIOSC is trying to develop a kind of a global open science environment that we can connect trustworthy research infrastructures to enable innovative science discoveries. And based on that, the JIOSC mission is trying to enhance the accessibility of resources, interconnectivity of internet, interoperability of platform, and the inclusiveness of participants of worldwide e-infrastructures to promote open science and also for international collaborations. And honestly speaking, there are different e-infrastructures, e-facilities around the world. So what do the JIOSC do? For our partnership, we have been challenging for this issue, what is kind of the platform, and when people come from the community trying to establish how can we just get this merged together. So we established a kind of a prototype trying to do something. And the platform is trying to develop the solutions from different layers of the system, like from the infrastructure level, the platform level, and the software level, and the community level. And through this prototype is based on the e-infrastructure, more of the IA as part is development for more focus on the PaaS and the SaaS level. So end users can get access to these different research resources, and these softwares are open sourced, and the facilities they based to the computing resources are gathered and managed with support from different domains. For example, one of the collaborative federated cloud is co-contributed from CSTNet, CST Cloud, and European EGI, the European grid infrastructure. So we provide different computing resources, but we, using the OpenStack or other solutions, we're trying to merge our cloud resources and develop kind of a domain demonstration to our researchers in certain areas. And we want to make sure that resources and algorithms, models, domain demonstrations is all collaborative model. And it's based on some kind of peer-to-peer policy and also kind of technical solutions. So based on this, and thanks to the co-support from our African colleagues for the JILS prototype, we have an adoption in Kenya, and Kenya is also one of the regional nodes for the AOSP. And for JILS, we have a joint federation test bed altogether. So through the kind of the Kenya website, researchers can find virtual machines to use, and they can do the resources orchestration, scheduling, and there are open source software, and they can also share data or get shared data models and kind of a workbench altogether for SDG research. And we have been doing kind of a capacity building and provide e-resources to support this kind of dimension. So based on this, we see that the infrastructure level kind of a collaboration is one thing, but for end users, we need to be more accessible for particular domain use case. So this one shows some of the JILSC pilot study on climate change in Southeast Asia. We have been collaborating different data from these regions based on the help from Thailand, from Indonesia, and from the China. And we combined different research resources together. So some of them have the precise data, some of them have the kind of a smart model. So we sit on the same table and talk about how we can do something all together. And we, based on a kind of a JILS test bed, as I mentioned, it is supported by CST Cloud, the EGI, the European side, and some of our other technical colleagues. So based on the environment, what the researchers do, they're trying to make their own research based on this kind of a platform. So there are sundry models of different type of data and algorithms, and we can do something like the prediction of in the region for climate, the short term and the long term, for some kind of informed decision making and something like that. And for our case studies, there are something more that has been incorporated in this year's one of the publication of the International Science Council. And you can have a look for the first story. It highlights some of our joint efforts to global south on developing the global and science cloud in regions to support SDG research, the tools we use, the kind of idea behind the partnership, and how we make the kind of story happen. And there are a lot of things going on for the policy part, for a kind of a technical adoption and for the domain demonstration. And we have been trying to provide such a kind of alignment with our Global South colleagues in the recent 5 years. And I think it was pretty impressive in different ways. And we learned from the local colleagues, and we exchange our ideas and find demand, and we will continue our work in the next 5 years as a second stage of the GEOSC initiative, trying to implement our technical and policy kind of solutions into a further kind of a level. And so for the next part, what we do, I think the first thing is we should still, as Tshiamo has been mentioning, something of the policy level. And through a recently publicized paper, we're trying to identify how we can align the open science kind of a fundamental recommendations into the fair, care, trust, protect some of the basic principles in guiding all this work. Open science provide the high-level kind of things, and the fair care, they provide the resources, and the service level is macro level for open science, and the meso level for the kind of resources. And so we need to combine different things together. And for GEOSC, there are something more we need to do. The first is to develop an open science test bed that the GEOSC African node is one of the highlights, and based on that, the domain stories are very important. We need to make sure that our platform are really useful to continue this all the things for resources providing and some of the others. And as Rini has been mentioning, capacity building is also one thing that is particularly important to use. And open science, SDGs, it focuses on AI and many of the other things. And besides, we also are trying to develop a kind of a national level standard based on the GEOSC kind of a technical work, and is trying to focus on how we develop the open science cloud services, the metadata level description of the metadata to make it extremely useful to address the interoperability, interconnectivity, and inclusiveness issues that down to earth, that mapping from the open science to our open science cloud development. And if that could further be endorsed as an international project, I would be open to welcome you be together with us to continue the kind of thing. And I think that's all for my the talk, and we almost finished that as our schedule. And based on our initial plan, there will be a kind of a panel discussion. And for the kind of theme is trying to say something about how to build shared infrastructures for SDGs with the global south. And before we continue to the NASA part, a quick question: is Professor Moore with us? Tshiamo is Moore here? Yeah. Okay, welcome. So we turn to the NASA part, and I will just change the name from Francis to Kuma, Professor Kuma. So Dr. Tshiamo, Moore, and Huajin, and also Professor Kuma. Yes, please join us at the stage. Is Daisy with us? I encourage Daisy from South Africa to come also, but we can continue the dialogue. I think you can also engage our audience. Yes, sure. But we need some models to see it. So we push you to speak, and we will encourage the audience. So that's the kind of thing. The audience has a priorities whether they speak or keep silence. But I will encourage you to do a better job. So that's it. Daisy, I'm not sure if Daisy will come, but I will continue. We will finish the 30 minutes in time. Let me change the. Oh, let me see. You have the microphone. You have the voice. Yes, microphone means. Microphone is a power. We will hear what you say. And this is the panel question. It highlights 3 different things. I think I can read, especially for Kuma. And thank you for joining us. So the 3 questions I propose here are, the first is what is the immediate infrastructure needs to support the SDG research, especially in the developing areas. And the second is how we ensure the ethical, adequate, and sovereignty data access. And the third is something of the AI elements. I think we can just start with first on the infrastructure needs, but it's free for you to choose any of them. And we have the, yes, please.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Lili, for taking us to this stage and discussing about the open science infrastructure. And I was fortunate to attend one of your the symposium, which was in Suzhou. And there was also a session on this open infrastructure, and I contributed to that. I just want to highlight that anything, if we are going to go for an open infrastructure system, we have to start from our local level, and then we have to go for the regional and then the global level. So I just want to give you an example, like how the Indian universities are coming with this open infrastructure. Nowadays, the funding is coming in this way, like you have to create a pool of infrastructure, and that will not be aligned with a single department. But there are more departments using those computer, those software. So it means creating a common platform where everyone is sharing those infrastructure in an open way and contributing. So you have a fixed schedule for that. Like if I'm a geographer, I have to work on some software. I have a fixed time that I'm going, the university is going to allot me that, and I'm going to use that infrastructure. In this way, we can minimize multiplying the infrastructure, and also minimizing the cost. And then if we have this type of infrastructure, I would just like to say here, like we as a academician and a professor from geography background, we basically go for more capacity building approach, because nowadays technology is moving very fast. And our students, those are in undergraduate or graduate level, they want some authentic information about the news technology. And I see that this international platform, which is creating this open infrastructure and all, should come out with the, because they have the stakeholders, several peoples are coming to them, and in their conferences and all, they can plan some courses or small videos and all related with those technology. Like nowadays, Chat GPT and all, several GPT platform has come up, and you will find that there are so many influencers. Those are talking about that I can give you a 28 days course for that Chat GPT. You want to go for learn how to go for writing the prompt and all these things. So why not a established institution is coming out with this authentic information, so that a small course or a small video can be shared in an open way, definitely taking into the principle of fair and all, and can be utilized by our students to go for a skill development or capacity building. So sharing those information on a single platform with authentic people will also work, and starting from the basic level, so that we can get the real picture of implementing this open infrastructure system in a university and then at the other level. Thank you.
Thank you, Pankaj. Thank you for the insights on the infrastructure part. And for the other panelists, anything to say at this moment?
I have some opinion. I think we need to build a very front interface, abstraction layer to allow global south countries with not so sort of art technology skills to easy to use the resources and the computational platforms to conduct their research. That is very important. And we also to incorporating the AI abilities with the interface, make it very easy to understand. That's my opinion.
Yes, thank you so much. I think for me, what is important is really a more integrated approach in terms of the development as well as the maintenance of infrastructure, because I think one of the major challenges, particularly from developing countries, is usually the costs that are associated with developing, not just developing. At times, once the infrastructure is there, is also the maintenance of the infrastructure. You know that in Africa, or in some developing countries, we usually have, challenges that are infrastructure related, going beyond just the hardware. There's issues of energy, there's issues of power, because most of these facilities are very, heavy, and they consume a lot of energy. So I think a more integrated approach, instead of having pockets, of isolated and fragmented, infrastructure, it does help if there's some sort of coordination, bringing in together the resources, have a more coordinated approach in terms of, developing, implementing, as well as maintaining the infrastructure. I think from an African perspective, and this doesn't only apply to Africa, but even across regions, and it also helps even in terms of from a collaborative effort. If you look at the cost, for example, even the GPUs, Tshiamo, earlier on spoke about, supercomputers. I think obviously with the high demand as a result of AI being implemented and being utilized, be it from health, agriculture, manufacturing, obviously the cost of GPUs has gone up, and it's very few institutions, particularly in the research, in academia, in the scientific fields, that can actually afford, to acquire and maintain such systems and platforms. So I think a more integrated approach, and it's not just nationally, but also opportunities for that cross regionally as well, in terms of from an implementation. We have started it in Africa with the SADC Cyber Infrastructure Initiative. It's something that we can actually implement across Africa, and obviously with platforms such as BRICS. I'm sure some of you are aware of BRICS, which is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. It has even expanded, to include even countries such as the Emirates, I think Ethiopia, and quite in Iran, if I'm not mistaken. So it does show that at least, there is, especially from a policy, the political will, there is that basis. So it's just then integrating and, coordinating the resourcing. Thank you.
The clouds trying to gather distributed resources and get it to people who want it. So it's a kind of a redesign of technical solutions trying to provide the enlightenment for policies. So we need to consist on. So your talk probably demonstrates the value of why we have the GeoSC, why we have the open science cloud, why we have the federation. So that is another way that consolidate the work, and we should continue to this dialogue. Tshiamo, please.
No, thanks. Fortunately, I made a detailed points in my presentation. I have to reiterate that the initial capital expenditure on this system is huge for supercomputing facilities, and certainly the operational expenditure, just like Mo mentioned, is also significant. By and large, you find that some supercomputing facilities, if you look at the utilization over a year maybe, with proper monitoring, you will find that there is some capacity, by and large, not being used. I remember going to Morocco. They spend a lot of money on the system there, very good system, but I think they're struggling utilizing it to the full. How nice would it be to create these research clouds with some access modalities, allowing communities from countries that do not have investments to be able to utilize those, obviously, including through some cost-sharing mechanism. Remember, these systems every 3 to 4 years have to be replenished. and upgraded. And to justify those investments to policymakers, by and large, you must demonstrate utilization and use cases and ecosystems around these things. So I would argue it's not for every country to invest in the supercomputing facilities, especially where resources are constrained, but to have a collective ecosystem, maybe of a critical number of supercomputing facilities with some modalities of how they could be accessed. And I think this is something that we are trying to push for in the SADC region through the cyber infrastructure implementation plan that has been discussed, that countries must come up with a cost-sharing mechanism, especially on some of these campus-level investments in supercomputing facilities. So I think this is the reality for resource-constrained environments. Thank you.
Thank you, Tshiamo. I think you mentioned something of the important essentials, and do we have anything to say as per this question from our broad audience? Any other feedback this way? Yes, please.
Thank you. Yeah, my name is Francis Gashenga. I am based at the University of Southern Queensland. And so I'm kind of looking at this from an outside of Africa perspective, but I'm originally from Africa as well. Now, one of the things I'm interested in is understanding with the initiative that you have for the open sciences and the partnerships that are being built for the Global South. Are there any conversations around maturing the Global South so that the technologies are not just being consumed from the Global North, but are also being produced in the Global South? So over time, there's capability to manufacture, build, and this, obviously hardware would take a while, but when you think of software, that is probably in the immediate term. So are there structures to protect intellectual property that's being generated in the Global South and reap the benefits of commercializing what is being generated and potentially contributing to the entire globe?
Thank you, Francis. I think you proposed something very important. So we not only share the resources with the Global South, but also enabling them with the capacity to produce the technical kind of solution themselves. So it's more of a sustainable model. Do we want any feedback from the? Yeah.
I think this is a key question. If you go to any university today, they will have an Office of Research and Development. And you find that within those offices, you'll have a technology transfer office by and large. And you'll certainly have people who advise on intellectual property. I happen to have spent about 5 years. After my postdoc, I spent 15 years in the UK doing my degrees and my PhD. Coming back home, I found that there are some gaps, maybe in the wider innovation ecosystem. But universities, by and large, have got Office of Research and Development that looks at research emanating from their researchers and the potential IP that comes out of it and how that could be obviously commercialized. I think it's fairly mature within the ecosystem of universities in Africa to have at least an Office of Research and Development. But I think if you look at the wider ecosystem outside universities, there is a lot of potential from innovators to assist them in that space. I did a project in 2013, 2015 as part of developing technology transfer offices in Southern Africa in the wider innovation ecosystems. We set up TTOs in innovation hubs. There were some accelerators, some incubators. But by and large, you'll find that a lot of innovations that are coming out of this ecosystem are still fairly immature. But I think there is some initiatives that we did in those years, for example, to establish university, industry, government co-creation platforms to really try to get our students to engage in innovation activities. But the challenge has always been, what happens to these small innovations that they do? Who can invest in them to take them to become more than just prototypes? Remember, it's the whole ecosystem. How do you take, for example, basic research to products, and there are many actors in the space. Some countries, South Africa, for example, have got a fairly mature innovation ecosystem with funding, including for scaling up some innovations. I think in the area of HPC and data, there's so much potential in terms of creating avenues for data innovations, hackathons, be able to promote open innovation. And I think it's very critical to bring multiple actors in the space to allow, obviously, holistic approach to some of these things. Short answer to your question is that yes, by and large, there are some IP services or technology transfer offices helping innovators, for example, get more out of their innovations that can, for example, be protected.
Yeah, thank you, Tshiamo. I think you've highlighted some of the points, particularly from a commercialization, point of view. I think what's important, what often lacks, it's not the generation of ideas, intellectual property. If you look at the number of IPs, be it patents that are filed, for example, in South Africa, but how many of them actually see the light of day in terms of actually being commercialized? So talking about the ecosystematic, approach, I think, remember in any of that, there is industry, there is government, then there's academia. So there's usually strong partnerships because obviously most governments, from a mandate point of view, they usually have, that strong mandate, to drive science, innovation, research and development, and obviously academia, but obviously from the industry point of view, because in most cases it has to make business sense, it's about the bottom line. So I think that's where we usually stagger, but there are some good cases, there are some, best practice, particularly if I give an example of Africa. If we look at the mining industry, there is quite a lot that has been done, be it by the likes of CSIR, universities such as the University of Witwatersrand, the University of Pretoria, and Mintech, which is one of the largest, mining research, science councils, in Africa, where there's actually been, cases where, from product, just not from innovation right up to commercialization of some of the products, be it technology innovations that are not just used in South Africa. Some of you who might be aware of the mining, innovations and systems, you'll know that some of them are used even here in Australia, even in the likes of in the likes of the USA. So we do have pockets of excellence. So it's just a matter of replicating, some of those to say, how has the mining industry, done it, and also looking at, going back to that issue of, investment from industry. If you look at the mining industry, there's been quite a lot of investment. Big global mining companies have invested quite a lot in terms of that research, ecosystem, because they want to focus more on the mining part. So the innovation part, they leave, to the likes of, universities, in South Africa, for example, the University of Wits, University of Pretoria, the likes of Mintech, the likes of CSIR. So there is quite best practices that we can replicate, across, some of the industries. There's been quite a lot done in agriculture as well. So the opportunities are endless. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm moving a little away from this, but taking your point of BRICS, you mentioned like BRICS is a platform where we can have this open infrastructure and open sharing of the things. And I had a project with China and Russia in that one, but we had to establish a node for sharing of our data. But there is a difficulties, where the ethical concerns comes, and how, keeping into mind this ethics and the governmental concerns and all, we established the nodal points in India, in China and in Russia, but there was some practical issues related with the transfer of the data. So in this part, when we have some struggle with this open sharing of the data and all, I just go for your sovereign data structure, like we can go for data vegetation, which is a good way of working, that not taking the data to the point where the analysis is taking place, but you are taking the algorithm or you are taking your question to the data and doing the analysis at that level. So in this way, somehow we are with a position that we can be taking into this ethical concern of the government or all other organizations. Those are involved because they are tired. 2, 3, 4 organizations are involved in that one. So everyone having their own say, and all these things will be perfectly settled when we go for the sovereign data structure, keeping into mind this data vegetation. Thank you.
Thank you, Kuma. And if we are free to make any comments for the audience, so considering the time, we have like 7 minutes, 6 minutes left. We turn to the next part. We talk about the. I suggest we merge the two questions together. And we have been talking something about what's currently challenges. So I want to turn to the next part for the future. And the keywords is about the data, AI, open science, and our rights. So some brief comments on this, both for the panelists and our audience. So it's more for how we envision the things, especially for the research data, the artificial intelligence, the open science, and the citizens' rights in between, something like this. And who wants to volunteer the first? Okay, thank you, Kuma.
Only 2, 3 words. When we are moving with the AI, and generally in geography domain, we work on geo-AI, we have to look into geo-privacy. The ethical concern is very much associated with this. So when we are sharing the latitude, longitude data to some of the organizations, those are using your data sets, how the inference is taking place, we have to take into consideration. So my part is like using the geo-AI or AI with more cautious approach, taking into consideration the geo-privacy. Thank you.
Thank you, Kuma and Tshiamo.
Thank you very much. I think I saw a presentation at the G20 by the Indian delegation. They're talking about the Indian AI pillars and the AI ecosystem they're trying to build. And I think this is something that could be replicated. I think the issue of data and the data sets that we can curate at the national level, that we can curate obviously to build a basis for training those small models that addresses obviously the challenges that reflects our priorities will be critical. Having an ecosystem around these data sets and having an ecosystem that allows access to compute for those that do not have access to compute, and having an ecosystem that allow investments around innovating around some of these data sets for solutions that make sense, obviously nationally or regionally, and certainly the skills around this data set. So I want to emphasize, I think, that there's need for ecosystem building around AI, data, and infrastructure, and provide provisions for equitable access. I think for big countries with obviously various levels of different types of universities with different pockets of depth, you find that sometimes there are some universities that have got access to funding and thus others that do not have much access to funding. So that ecosystem approach will allow, I think, equitable access to resources to allow everybody have to have a chance to grow. So I wanted to highlight that vis-a-vis the model that I saw that India presented. I think also in the US, you have the National AI Resource Initiative that also tries to develop an ecosystem around infrastructure, data, and skills. So I think these are models at different scales that we can try out to make sure that we have avenues for those that do not have access to be able to do things here.
Thank you so much, Tshiamo. I think from my side, one can look at how do we really start to build robust robust institutions. And what do I mean by that? So there's 3 pillars that one can look at. It's the regulative pillars in terms of looking at issues of policy legislation that has been talked about, be it, at a regional level. I know the likes of Europe have done quite well when it comes to that. Policies. Africa, we are in the process of developing some of the policies. Then there's also the issue of the normative pillar when it comes to standards. I think the development of standards, there's been quite a lot that has been done in other areas such as security, but I think from a data, from an ethics point of view, I don't think we have uniform standards. We are in the process of getting there to say, what does it mean, when it comes to the ethics of data? Obviously academia in a way has defined, but that uniformity is quite important, as well as the cultural cognitive pillar, which is very difficult because of differences, for example, across regions. For example, from a European perspective, what are some of the value systems, what are some of the beliefs when it comes to the moral use or the ethical use of data compared to Asia, compared to India, as well as compared to to Africa. So I think those are some of the things that the standardization, over and above, obviously, creating robust infrastructure, because we can't take away the fact that, that robust and resilient infrastructure is quite key, because in most cases, most of the data, whether it's shared, whether it's being accessed, we need to have that basis, in terms of resilient and strong infrastructure. But I think those three key pillars, for me, are quite key in terms of ensuring that we build institutions that are robust and resilient. Thank you.
Thank you more, Tshiamo and Kuma. Do we have any other comments from our audience? I think before we finish our session, there probably will be the last dialogue. I would like to hear anything from you. Anything to say at this moment? Nothing? So I think that's fine. And there's a brief summary of all things. Thank you to our panelists from the infrastructure kind of challenges. We heard something that Kuma mentioned, highlights the capacity building, that we should do something to enable kind of a data literacy that is pretty important for infrastructures. And my colleague Hua Jin mentioned that for the technical development, it should be something of the user-friendly, lower and break the silos, the barriers, so more people from the developing areas are easy to get access to the technical tools to empower them. And from more, we learned something more for the integrated solutions that can reduce the kind of investment and lower the cost, so more people can be more accessible to different research resources. And Tshiamo shared us with the vision on how we develop everything based on the African kind of a platform and the things we can do. He also shared some of the initiatives around the world that we can borrow the experiences, and for future visions, our colleagues also mentioned something like the kind of a research resilience, trustworthy kind of a e-platforms, and something like that. And our audience also mentioned something. I think is the level of services we have been contributing, how we developed the kind of infrastructures for our global south. So first, it is something we contribute to for the local people. And the next step, we want something from the local and by the local. So we enable them to do everything in a sustained way. And as for me, myself, honestly speaking, we have been talking about how to develop kind of a regional open science cloud in the, I think it's over 5 years. And there are a lot of things we have been experiencing. As for me, myself, I have been connecting colleagues from our Asian colleagues, our African colleagues, and I have been visiting US and somewhere in Europe. We have some close alignment with the European Open Science Cloud, and I think there are a lot of things. And the day I come on Saturday, I just happened to walk around somewhere quite near for the museum. I'm not quite sure, it's a Queensland museum. And there is a picture on the second floor, and they have different keywords. And I was pretty impressed by that. It says something of the connection and belonging. I can't remember everything, but I remember that it shows you some of the pictures of the seashells or something, and it says that when you come from a different region, the sovereignty, you will be presented or you belongs to something because you are yourself is a kind of a, how to say, is a name card for your local, and you will have something that make you pretty comfortable because that is maybe your local food, your hometown, some of the different things. And it allows me for our work to open science. So belongings, it may be something in your pocket. And open science make it different. It means that it is not only the resources we have so far, but also there is a kind of a possibility. We are trying to co-contribute from different perspectives and enable every of us with higher capabilities based on this kind of support. So we can continue the dialogue and trying to make our kind of a open science cloud more resilient, vibrant for the kind of a sustained future. So that's it for the talk today. And thank you for all your time, and keep in touch and see you in other JIOS events. Thank you. And thank you.